After the fight with the Demon King, Libra and I returned to our original location and pondered the Demon King's words inside the car. It seemed there was a significant difference between this world and the game. Unknown settings appeared one after another. There was even a theory that the G.O.Dis was a villain. It was unbelievable. However, if one thought about it, this world was rather strange in many ways. This was reality. I was not having a very realistic dream. There would be a limit to a dream's realism, so this world most definitely existed. Yet this world was strangely influenced by the game, such as status and level being expressed in numerical values. These could not have been natural phenomena. Such game elements must have been intentionally added by the G.O.Dis. Yet this begged the question, where did these ideas come from? Unless the G.O.Dis herself knew about the game and created the world in its likeness, the situation could not be otherwise explained. So this game existed in the past. After an epic story unfolded, it ended with "This is just a program in the game world." Yet another virtual world had developed into one where programs lived and monsters evolved. If this was such a world, then, no, impossible. In that case, it was impossible to explain the difference of this world from Xgate Online. If this was the virtual world of Xgate Online, there would not be a time skip of 200 years. This was because time did not pass within the game. It would be the same during the morning, afternoon, or night. Months and years did not pass. When I started playing the game, it was Midgard year 2800. 6 years later, it was still Midgard year 2800 and not 2806. The same year repeated itself indefinitely, just like the world of. However, it was clearly different from the world that I was currently in. Therefore, the hypothesis could not be established. No, I still could not understand. There was not enough information. I should have listened to what the Demon King had to say after all. I was so close to getting to the core of this world. Look, Rapasama. It's. Hearing Dina, I was brought back to reality. Looking out the window, there was a towering mountain with a forest at its foot. It seemed we safely arrived at the location of another member of the 12 Stars. Although I was still concerned about what the Demon King said about the world, I could not make sense of it no matter how hard I thought. I guessed I should leave it for the time being. I needed to resolve the problem before me. Still, this was part he knows of the maiden. Dina said that she was alive and well, but was this true? It wasn't that I doubted her, but it was rather impossible for her to be alive after 200 years. This was because her race was human. Previously, I mentioned a tamer could capture an enemy, be it magical beast or human. This was nothing unusual. In most RPGs, humans, such as XX Soldier or XX Priest, generally appeared as monsters. There was a cruel skill called Eat, which consumed the target to recover one's HP. There were cases where players used it on human soldiers. It was horrifying when the main heroine charged towards the human soldiers and was followed by crunching sound effects of her eating. It was essentially the same thing. Part he knows was originally a human bearing the T.I.Tle of Maiden who serves the G.O.Dis and was treated as a mob. She appeared in a team with other mobs in a high difficulty dungeon that could only be challenged by level 1000 players. She would annoyingly provide healing and support from the rear. As an ally, that support would be very useful. I wanted one too, so I captured her. Although I trained her to some degree, her combat power was fairly weak. After all, she wasn't meant to fight, but to provide healing and support. Although she came from a high difficulty dungeon, she was only like an ordinary level 800 player. In a normal fight, she was definitely the weakest of the 12 heavenly stars. But it was fine for her to be weak. She had a vast amount of SP and very high intelligence and mind statuses. She could set up S.H.I plus ELDs and heal from the rear. This alone was already very helpful. Trading blows in the front line was Leon's job. Well, I still had not recruited him yet. Back on topic. Anyway, part he knows was human, so her lifespan should be short. Even if she survived after 200 years, well, it was impossible, considering her lifespan. But if she was still alive, she must be very old. I did not think she could endure the hards.h.I+p of traveling. If I was right, she must be an elderly maiden. For now, we should put an end to the occupation. It was fine even if she could not travel with us. For rearguard, Dina was enough, otherwise, she might die just from walking. Virgo, as we approached the forest, there was indeed a barrier that completely covered it. We did not encounter any enemy, so we reached the center easily. It seemed after so long, she was still on our side. In that case, we should not be ambushed here. We were probably recognized as allies. As I walked through the forest, I realized this place could truly be called a sanctuary. Sunlight shone through the gaps between the trees, while animals ran about freely and fearlessly. There were many animals resembling squirrels and rabbits, further strengthening this atmosphere. Libra did not seem to have any particular emotion, but for a sheep like Aries, this must be a cozy place. As for Agacaros, he was too out of place, like a violent mismatch with the surroundings. It was too surreal for a goat-headed to be in a forest where small animals played. Well, it was actually the same for Aries, who was over 100 meters long. But he was a fancy rainbow sheep that just looked big, so it was marginally safe. After walking for a while, we came to a cabin in the forest. Did Parthinos live here? This region was unapproachable because of Parthinos. Thus, there should be n.o.body else living here. I stood before the door and knocked lightly. A knock. I'm impossible. Why? The sound of a young girl, who was shocked to her core, was heard from within the cabin. On the other side, I was really surprised too. I was certain that an old woman would answer, not a young girl. Perhaps it was Parthinos after all, maybe she discovered the art of youthful rejuvenation. After waiting for a while, the door opened gingerly. A young girl's face appeared in the opening. She was a cute girl with big bright eyes. Her hair was light pink. She was about 15 years old. But this child was not Parthinos. As I recalled, Parthinos' hair was green, not pink. Was it dyed? As I thought about this, Agacaros put his hand in the gap of the slightly opened door and forcefully opened it. Then, he reverted to his demonic form for some reasons and stood before the girl with his arms crossed. Young woman. You are being rude before our great lady, fool. You are the rude one. I grabbed the foolish head of Agacaros and tossed him aside with my arm strength. What should I do now? This was a really bad first impression. Frightened by the demon that suddenly appeared, she backed off quickly. Fear was evident on her face as she stiffened in surprise. A pair of white wings trembled on her back. Wings? This girl was a flugel? Then she definitely could not be Parthinos. Parthinos was a human, so she should not have wings. Seriously, who was this child? Oh, I'm sorry. My subordinate was rude. I'm not a suspicious person, probably. I do not intend to hurt you. I'm here to look for an acquaintance. Girl, do you know someone named Parthinos? Do you happen to know Granny? Granny, was it? Then, there were two possibilities regarding this girl's identity. The first possibility was that she was of Parthinos bloodline. It was possible to have a half-breed between humans and flugels. Parthinos might have found a flugel husband and had a child, who in turn had a child. But if this was the case, where was Parthinos' husband? The second possibility was that she was adopted. For some reasons, Parthinos picked up this flugel girl and raised her. For now, I should just check her status. If I could confirm her race, it would be easy to determine which possibility was correct. Level 320 race, flugel CLA.S.S, Acolyte 100, Priest 200, Bard 20 HP, 21,000 SP, 3,301 STR, Strength 1,200 Dex, Dexterity 990 VIT, Vitality 1,390 Int, Intelligence 1,800 AGI, Agility 1,270 MND, Mind 3,102 Luck, Luck 1,505, she was her adopted granddaughter. There was no half prefix before her race, so there was no blood relation. Her level was quite high by the current standard. Perhaps she was trained by Parthinos. Oh, those black wings, are you the Rupa-san that Granny talked about? Yes. My full name is Rupas Maffel. Behind me are Aries and Libra of the 12 heavenly stars. The idiot rolling over there is Agakeros. The one with blue hair is Dina. When I introduced them, Libra, Aries, and Dina bowed politely. And the young girl returned the bow accordingly. What a nice, polite girl. Was I the most impolite person here, by any chance? I couldn't use honorifics even if I wanted to. The words always came out in a pressuring tone. Just call me Virgo. Granny would be very happy to know that Rupa-san is here. If you don't mind, can you go over to Granny's place? Is that okay? That would be a great help. She was not wary of us. What a straightforward child. My face relaxed unconsciously. Maybe she was not so vigilant because of the barrier. As I thought this, Dina pulled on the hem of my clothes. What is it, Dina? Rupa-sama, this is bad. That girl's character somewhat overlaps with mine. Really? As it is, my personality will become thinner and less noticeable. It was already like that from the start. Talking about a topic like that with such a serious expression, was she an idiot? I ignored the traumatized Dina and followed behind the girl who was leading the way. After that, Libra and Aries followed behind. Agakeros, who had literally filled his belly with GRA.S.S, returned to my shadow. It seemed this guy really is a goat. Aries, don't look so jealous. I will give you the corn later. After walking for tens of minutes, the girl led us to an opening in the forest. Light shone down as if to avoid the trees, adding to the fantastic atmosphere of the forest. And in the center was a tombstone made of marble. The stone was engraved with the name, Parthinos. This is Granny. Granny fervently believed in the resurrection of Rupa-san and lived on with that in mind. But last year, she choked while eating a fruit, then, I stared at Dina silently. She turned her gaze away to look at the sky, breaking out in cold sweat. Hey, what is this, Parthinos, you are dead. Author's notes, about half-breeds Q. How does a half-flugel, half-human look like? If the human bloodline is strong, he would be almost like a human. If the flugel bloodline is strong, then he would be almost like a flugel. Lifespan depends on the bloodline, but it would be about half that of a flugel. Unlike pure-blood flugels, they do not care much about the color of their wings. Q. What about a half-beastkin? He would be like a human with the ears or tail of a beast. A pure-blood beastkin is basically a bipedal beast, like the sword saint. However, the possibility of becoming a pretty girl with cat ears, rabbit ears, or dog ears is low. If things don't go well, you end up with landmines like an uncle with cat ears or rabbit ears. In the first place, there are very few half-beastkins, since only rarely would a human want to have a child with a bipedal beast. Q. Orc? No generations apart, an orc will be a 100% orc. He would not look like his mother's race. It's strange, but no half-orc is ever born. Despite issuing forth from a human womb, the child would be a 100% orc. The meaning thereof has puzzled the biologists of Midgard. Footnotes. Saisi-san is an early manga series that was adapted into the longest-running animated TV series in the world, Guinness World Record, 2013. The manga ran for 28 years, but the characters never aged. Saisi was always 27 years old. Vanir was first mentioned in. For those who had forgotten, it is the world of the Vanir, the deities of fertility and wisdom, in Norse mythology. In this novel, it is the original home of the Flugels. Parthinos occupied the place, forcing the Flugels to relocate to Gjallarhorn. This could be a reference to Dragon Quest VIII, not too sure, since the author tends to be somewhat obscure about his references. Demon Lord, back in Agakeros' race was specifically mentioned as Lord Demon. I don't know if it's a mistake or if the author just changed his mind about his race name. Virgo is one of the constellations of the zodiac, lying between Leo and Libra. It is the second largest constellation in the sky, easily located by its brightest star, Spica. A wild last boss appeared. Translator, Hand of Vecna editor, 2 more free thoughts. So what does this mean, Dina? Back then, I'm sure you said that the 12 heavenly stars are alive and well, but, that. Because the barrier was maintained, I guessed that Parthenos was still alive. Or rather, why does the barrier still exist even though Parthenos is no longer here? In response to my queries, Dina made uncomfortable excuses and raised questions about the existing barrier. It might seem like excuses, but her question was actually justified. Alioth's barrier was the type that was triggered by his own death. However, this barrier was the duration type which would disappear after some time. It was really strange for it to persist after 1 year. I thought it might be possible at a high level, but Dina's reaction seemed to indicate otherwise. In that case, the question was why the barrier remained. About that, after her death, Granny stayed in this world out of grudge. She is currently a vengeful spirit wandering somewhere in the forest. So the maiden actually, after 200 years, Parthenos was becoming ridiculous. This was not Parthenos of the maiden, but Parthenos of the evil spirit. Oh, I understand the current situation. Basically, it was Dina's misunderstanding that the 12 heavenly stars were all alive and well. This was caused by the remaining barrier, which led Dina to believe that Parthenos was alive. But the truth was that Parthenos died and the barrier was maintained by her grudge. I could not blame her for the insufficient research. N.O. Body could have expected reality to be so cruel. For the time being, I'll let it pass by meeting her first. It was pitiful and unbearable for someone with the T.I.Tle of the maiden to abandon her body and become an evil spirit. Honestly, I was happy that she was so loyal to me, Rupas, but I felt sorry for her too. It would be necessary for me to liberate her. Virgo, right? Do you know where Parthenos' spirit is? No, I don't, but she should be somewhere nearby. In response, Virgo shook her head. Since the barrier existed, she must be nearby. However, it was difficult to grasp a spiritual end.I.tie, so even her granddaughter Virgo did not know her exact location. So how do you know that she has become a ghost? Oh, about that. I saw Granny when she occasionally came out to maintain the barrier. Virgo replied in a straightforward manner to most of Aries' questions. The two of them kept chattering on about various things. Dina was muttering and sighing that her role was being overlapped, but it seemed to me like the one that Virgo overlapped was Aries. Aries' use of formal language was superior. Actually, he only used formal language with me, so this would be how he would ordinarily speak. Virgo was certainly not like Dina, who was fixated on using formal speech at every situation. So why don't we just wait for the barrier to weaken? The maintenance was done a while ago, so I don't think she would come out soon. I simply thought we could wait it out, but according to Virgo, this plan was bad and likely to fail. The barrier was recently reset, so she wouldn't appear for the time being. She would probably appear if we were to wait for a few months, but it would be very troublesome. Well, we were not in a hurry, so maybe it would be good to wait patiently. As I was drawing this conclusion, I sensed Agakeros raising his magical power and quickly turned around. In that case, we just have to break the barrier. Leave it to me. Way Agakeros. Please be at ease, my master. Let me destroy this barrier and drag Parthenos out. No, way invisible break. Ignoring my words, Agakeros the idiot activated his magic. This was the advanced moon attribute magic invisible break, which was a kind of cancellation magic that removed duration-based magic. If there was defensive and support magic, there would also be magic that could nullify them. This was the role of Agakeros among the 12 heavenly stars, cancelling the support magic of the opponents. This was something I treasured a lot. However, I did not say that he could use it now. The sound of GLA.S.S shattering echoed through the forest. At the same time, I could feel the protection of the forest Vanas.H.I+NG. He just had to do it, this stupid goat. Among the 12 heavenly stars, he was the one who never listened to what other people were saying. I could understand that he was revved up for the first time in a while, but this was too aggressive. What if Parthenos mistook it for an enemy? How is it, my master? I understand you are an overly anxious idiot, but think before you act next time. I glanced around the forest and lightly reprimanded the goat who was looking at me in self-satisfaction. Agakeros looked as if he was depressed, but I couldn't care less. Since I was here, I didn't think Parthenos would consider us to be enemies. I crossed my arms and silently waited a few minutes for Parthenos to appear. Since it became like this, there was no choice but for her to appear and repair the barrier. The problem was that she might consider us as enemies for breaking the barrier and attack us. She should know me, but since she was now a vengeful spirit, she might have forgotten me in the worst-case scenario. But a vengeful spirit? I should not believe in something so occult, but I still accepted it readily. Well, after I have experienced so many bizarre things, I could not be surprised with something like a ghost. I merely felt, oh, so ghosts really exist. As such, I was confident that I would not be surprised even if a zombie or ghost appeared before me. I was getting so accustomed to strange things that I was feeling numb. But as we waited, N.O. Body showed up. Time continued to pass. She's not coming. It doesn't look like she's coming. Dina, who was beside me, was strangely in tune with my muttering. I thought she would appear immediately, but I was disappointed. Had she already pass on? Or did she maintain the barrier at fixed intervals and sleep the rest of the time? After that, we continued waiting for Parthenos to appear, but she never did in the end. Seriously, what should we do now? Virgo Hero, I'm sorry for the last time. We intended for the preparations to be thorough, but it seemed we were too naive. Because of the unusual encounter in which Rupas and the Demon King fought, the hero and his companions returned to the Kingdom of Swords, Laevitian. Some people said they were lousy. Sei wanted to shout and tell them to face Rupas and the Demon King themselves. This was impossible. Even if they gathered hundreds or thousands of people, they could not win. The king said they were too naive, but it did not change Sei's thoughts. Indeed, they were too naive. If the elites were assembled, if enough people were gathered, if weapons were collected, it was a complete mistake to think that such petty tricks would be enough to deal with the opponent. It was impossible to understand, the terror and hopelessness could not be understood by someone who did not witness that battle. One of his companions, Alfie, was so terrified that she refused to join the party anymore. But Sei could not blame her. Even he himself wanted to escape back to J.A.Pan if it was possible. Alfie's departure is regrettable. However, be at ease. I have already prepared someone even more elite than her. The king spread his arms and introduced the people who were waiting at the side. First, the one with the fearsome nickname Oni, the one recognized as the strongest mercenary, Alfie's father, Gans. At the king's P.R.O. announcement, a bald middle-aged man came forward. A huge battle axe, about the size of a person, was on his back, while a sword hung at his waist. His brand new armor looked mismatched, but it was probably given to him by the king. Looking at his face, Sei inevitably thought that he did not look like his daughter at all. Genes were truly mysterious. Second, the party that cleared the black-winged royal tomb, the adventurers who recovered the treasures therein, Hawkeye. Please. We accept your royal command, your majesty. Leave the hero to us. The reply was so full of confidence that it seemed rude. The man was completely dressed like an adventurer. He had brown hair that stood on ends and sharp eyes that seemed to S.H.I+N.E. His presence and attitude seemed to suggest that there was nothing to be afraid of. It made one think that he would charge at an enemy even if there was a huge difference in their abilities. 3 more people stood behind Jean and nodded confidently at his words. And then, I thought it was wrong. The young people who bear the future and the youth from another world are being forced into battle, yet I myself stays in safety on the throne. Yes, this is a self-evident truth. How can the world be saved if oneself is unwilling to plunge into the fire? Everyone present was shocked at the king's self-reproach. Sei had a bad feeling about this, as if the king was about to say something outrageous. The premonition was true as the king shouted something crazy. I shall accompany the hero. Let's save the world together. Your Majesty. The king rose from his throne and made an idiotic declaration. His aides shouted with expressions like it was the end of the world. But the king continued his speech as if he did not care. I may be an old man now, but I too fought in the front line when I was young. I will not regret my way of life. I shall also be the cornerstone for the future of my subjects. What descendant of the Sword King would not step forward to face death? Soldiers, bring me my sword. Witness the sword skills of Alioth VI, the one with the Sword King's bloodline. The king is mad. Stop him. What are you people doing? At Cruz's command, the soldiers moved in unison and took hold of the king. The king brandished his arms in a way unexpected of an old man and threw 1,000 blows as if he was in a great battle. However, the number of enemies was too great and he was unceremoniously dragged away. Was this really okay? Wasn't this treason? The others did not seem to think so. Is this really okay? No problem. That's the king's illness. But isn't that a treason? It's always like this. His Majesty is not someone who would be bothered by such things. Although if it was not Friedrich Dano, the person would have been thrown into prison. Isn't it necessary for the king to look dignified and majestic? I have already given up on that. Apparently, Cruz was having a hard time with the king. Incidentally, he was the king's advisor. Well, it must be really troublesome with this king. Was the muscle-brained king even playing his political role properly? Still, SEI looked at his travel companions again. Sword Saint, Friedrich. An Amazon who served as the vice-captain, real name unknown. A rearguard specialist, Cruz. A mercenary, Gantz. An adventurer, Jean. Ricardo, Nick, and Shu, also from Hawkeye. And himself. What was with this needlessly thick-headed group? SEI was feeling very sad for some reason. Author's notes: female knights, mercenaries, beautiful elves, and beastkin. This should be the template for a male heroes party. SEI, I want to go home already. Footnotes: Jean, leader of the party Hawkeye, was level 38 in. In comparison, the supporting rangers were level 50, while Alfie was level 72 in. A wild last boss appeared. Translator, Hand of Vecna editor, 2 more free thoughts since then, we waited overnight. In the end, the spirit of Parthinos did not appear to us. I wondered if she had already said on to the afterlife. I didn't really know if the afterlife existed, but since this was a different world with magic, it wouldn't be strange for an underworld to exist. After all, there was AG.O.dis in this world. Ghosts and vengeful spirits also existed in the game as monsters, so it felt like heaven and H.E.L.L probably existed as well. After all, Agakeros was born in HELL. However, this was troubling. With Parthinos dead, it would now be 11 heavenly stars instead of 12 heavenly stars. I did not intend to recruit Parthinos in her ghostly state, so the position of the maiden would definitely be left vacant. After all, she did rather well so far, so she should get some rest. But should I look for the next maiden or just leave them as 11 heavenly stars? Dina was asserting and pointing to herself for some reasons, but I ignored her and made my way back. Should I tame a humanoid monster and train her from scratch? Or perhaps create a golem? Either way, she would not be like her predecessor. It seems Parthinos is no longer here. In that case, there is no reason to stay here any longer. Let's go. I announced my intention to leave the forest. Dina and the others nodded in agreement. I would like to meet her at least once, but if we stayed too long, it would just inconvenience Virgo. If Parthinos had already departed for the afterlife, I wondered if she would be angry with Agakeros for breaking the barrier. I hoped we could come back at a later date. Unlike Svalin, which was invaded, and Gillerhorn, which was on the verge of civil war, there was no reason to rush here. I felt sorry for the Flugels who were exiled, but this issue could wait. Oh, but is it okay? What is it, Ares? This is Rupasama's hometown, right? You told me before that your mother's grave is in the country on the mountain. I stiffened at Ares' words and stared at the mountain. Mother, by the way, there was a memory of mother in the. Rupaz hated her father and was hated by him, but her relations.H.I+P with her mother seemed to be good. Or rather, she wanted to destroy the irrationality of the world for her mother's sake. A grave would imply she was already dead. This might have unexpectedly influenced Rupaz's behavior. My memory recorded that Master would visit the place annually and devote prayers to her deceased mother 200 years ago. Since we have come this far, why not visit your mother's grave for the first time in a while? Libra's explanation implied that their relations.H.I+P wasn't merely good, but that she was a considerable weight in Rupaz's heart. For me, it was just the grave of a stranger. But I was Rupaz now, so this was not completely unrelated to me. That's right. Since this place was sealed for 200 years, the grave must have been neglected for some time. It's not a bad idea to visit now. I didn't know if Rupaz's mother would wish for a stranger like me to visit her grave, but this couldn't be helped. I still didn't know why this was happening, but I expected that there would be a hint ahead. If the Demon King's words were to be believed, Rupaz took independent actions that were not in my knowledge and had her own experiences and memories. She was aware of some things that I did not know. The G.O.Dis scenario, this would be the most important phrase in the future. If the mystery could be solved, I might find out why I became like this. And the key to unlocking it was none other than Rupaz. What did Rupaz notice before she was sealed? What was she trying to do? Knowing that would probably unravel the entire mystery. Are we visiting the grave? Shouldn't we hurry then? This is unexpected, Dina. You are actually opposed to it. Oh, no. I'm not actually opposed to it. I just feel that we shouldn't stay for too long. I was surprised that Dina had a negative opinion about visiting the grave. I thought she would casually reply, let's go. But I understood after hearing her follow-up statement. It's just that the mountain is very high. I don't really want to climb it. Oh, I see. I nodded and looked at the mountain again. There was a saying that fools and flugels like high places. Well, flugels really preferred high places. The mana was thin in high altitude, so it would be comfortable to flugels. Since they could fly, it wasn't that difficult to reach high places. For example, to reach the summit of a mountain with an altitude of 500 meters, a flugel could do it like a human walking 500 meters on the flat ground. No. It would be about if the horizontal distance was included. It would not feel that far. Furthermore, the mountain formed a natural barrier to make it difficult for foreign enemies to attack, giving the inhabitants a peace of mind. But the problem was, what was Vinayam's altitude? I did not have a skill that could measure altitude by the eye, but it seemed to be very high. Libra, do you know the height of the mountain? Yes, I measured it at an altitude of 3,807 meters. Oh, it was higher than. Certainly, we could not do this on foot. To flugels, this would be merely 3 to 4 kilometers of travel. Since they could fly at a speed faster than an adult riding a bicycle, covering this distance would not be tiring. There were plenty of people who commuted to work or school on bicycles over such a distance. This could be done daily without any problems. If I or Libra flew at full speed, we would need only 1 minute, no, less than 30 seconds. Certainly, this height is troubling, but it isn't impossible to carry you and fly there. There would be no problem if I carry Ares and Agakeros while Master carries Dina. However, for future considerations, we need the means to fly and ma.s.se. Libra made a good point. There were only a few of us now, but the number of people would increase in the future. The situation would become troublesome by then. Besides me, only Libra and one of the twins among the 12 heavenly stars could fly. Furthermore, the other twin could not fly, so it would be difficult to move when the number of people increased. Since both hands were occupied, it would be impossible for us to respond quickly if anything happened. By the way, Agakeros, can't you fly? You have wings after all. Master, I can certainly fly, but I can't fly so high. Have you forgotten? Oh. It's like this. Indeed. Since Agakeros had wings, I decided to ask about it, but it seemed he could not fly so high. Basically, He was like an early form of that had not yet learned how to fly. In other words, only Libra and I could really fly. In that case, I might as well let him fly. The non-flying members needed to come along, but Libra and I should not have both our hands occupied. Therefore, the solution is simple, let someone who can carry everyone fly. Okay, everyone leave the forest now. Dina, find the floating stones out of the alchemical materials that we recovered from the royal tomb and bring a few of them here. Now then, let's start remodeling. In the game, once an alchemist trends.m.u.ted an item, it could not be further modified. To upgrade an item, it must be rebuilt from scratch. But this was not a game, so it should be possible to upgrade. Anyway, it wouldn't be a mistake to at least test it out for the future. And so I remodeled Tanaka. Its outward appearance did not change much. In consideration of the future, it was enlarged and its height was increased significantly. Of course, it was not unnecessarily high. The second floor S.P.A.C.E, which did not exist previously, was added. The roof itself was mobile, so it could be changed into a roof terrace as a luxury specification. But this was just the start as the main feature was yet to come. Okay, Tanaka. Transform. Yes, boss. At my command, Tanaka turned on its lights. The wind blew from its bottom, causing the car body to float, while its four wheels turned sideways. Flames surged from the centers of the tires to increase buoyancy. Steel wings were deployed from the sides of the car, accompanied by engine sounds. This was the newly upgraded Tanaka, called, I couldn't think of a good name. How troublesome. Let's just call it Tanaka Jet. Tanaka level, 350 race, artificial lifeform HP, 18,000 SP, 0 STR, strength 862 dex, dexterity 120 VIT, vitality 987 int, intelligence 9 AGI, agility 1530 MND, mind 78 luck, luck 100 0. It seemed if good materials were used during the upgrade, it's. In that case, Libra probably already exceeded the level limit. This was unfortunate, but I couldn't make her any stronger. It might be possible for Mizar, but it didn't make sense to rely on the deceased. A flying camping car was amazingly surreal, even if I said so myself. How is this, Dina? Now everyone can come along. Indeed. As if distracted by the flying camping car, Dina's reply was somewhat lackluster. In contrast, Aries and Virgo were looking at Tanaka with eyes s.h.I plus ning like children. By the way, Virgo came along as a guide and for surveillance. Since it was an important place that was once guarded by her granny, she was taking the precaution in case we did something strange. After all, Agakeros the fool already did something like that, so we couldn't deny her concerns. Do you want to ride it? Is it okay? If so, yes please. I asked Virgo since she looked so curious about it. She happily accepted my offer. It seemed flying vehicles were considered romantic everywhere. Although it looked the way it was, I did not dislike stuff like this. It's a big problem, Rapasama. What is it, Libra? Tanaka did not have any equipment for aerial combat. At the very least, there should be a gunner's seat. Then the main cannon. Anti-aircraft attacks, and explosive bombs, what in the world are you talking about? I played the straight man to Libra, who requested excessive armaments on Tanaka. I got inside Tanaka, followed by Aries, Agakeros, Dina, and Libra. Virgo entered last in a reserved manner. After confirming that everyone was aboard, I closed the door and commanded Tanaka, okay. Let's go, Tanaka. Yes, boss. Tanaka answered and flew into the sky. Since this was a different world, it was fine. If it was in J.A.Pan, it would be really surreal. Anyway, a flying car was truly romantic, such that although it was still a fiction-idocious invention, it could be considered a promised product. But for this romance to be realized in such a manner, the world was truly full of surprises. Now then, next stop would be Rupa's hometown. It would be nice if there were some useful clues. Author's notes. Translator, I have no idea what he's talking about, just some random blabbering about flying in the sky or something that didn't much sense. It doesn't seem relevant to the story anyway. Footnotes: Rupa's dream of her mother is in. This distance is based on the hypotenuse of an isosceles right-angled triangle. Using Pythagorean theorem, a2 plus b2 equals c2, the hypotenuse c would be square root of 500x 500 plus 500x 500 equals 707.1. Mount Fuji is the highest mountain in J.A.Pan, reaching an alt.I.2 of 3,776 meters. This makes Vinayamar 31 meters higher. For comparison, Mount Everest has an elevation of 8,848 meters. Charizard, also called Lizardon, in J.A.Pan, is an orange, dragon-like Pokémon. Tanaka was initially level 200 when it was created so it gained 150 levels. A wild last boss appeared. Translator, Hand of Vecna editor, 2 more free thoughts. There was a term. It was a mysterious phenomenon of feeling like you had experienced or seen something before, even though you did not. This French term, déjà vu, was overused in many stories. And right now, I was feeling something stronger than this. Aboard Tanaka, we arrived at Rupa's hometown where she was born and raised among the Flugels, Vinayamar. Vinayamar sat on top of the mountain, where the air and mana were thin. The local topography made it difficult to walk. Given how Gjallarhorn was like, it seemed that Flugels instinctively preferred places like these. It was strange. I was feeling nostalgic about this town. Although I never visited this place before, I felt nostalgia and disgust towards it. There was a crumbling bakery, where no bread was ever sold to the children of Taboo. Rupa's, was even kicked by the shopkeeper before. There was a half-collapsed building, where a brat once threw rocks at me. There was a large, once grand mansion, where Merak used to live and which I always stared in admiration. None of them were fond memories. This town continued to stimulate the bad memories that I did not know I had. Even though I did not experience it myself, I had the impulse to use an area skill to destroy the entire place. Rupa-sama, are you alright? Your face looks pale. Oh, no problem. Let's go. First, let's take a look at my family's home. Hearing Aries' question, I realized my expression was stiff. For some reason, the frequency of me being influenced by Rupas was increasing. Being in this town seemed to accelerate the process. If this continued, I would lose my sense of self. No, perhaps I had already lost it long ago. I could not bring myself to say, it was not like that. Furthermore, I did not think this was unpleasant. Perhaps, I was really going crazy. In any case, I should drop by at Rupa's home. The ghost of Parthinos might be there. There might also be some hints regarding Rupa's behavior before she was sealed. Is this Rupa-sama's hometown? It looks like a nice place. For me, it is a place of bitter memories. Most of them involve having the neighborhood brats throwing rocks at me. At the same time as I casually answered Libra, the houses in my line of sight vanished in an explosion. I turned and saw Libra, Aries, and Agacaros held out their hands in that direction. It was evident that they were the ones who made those attacks. Hey, what were you people doing? I retract my previous statement. This is the C.R.A.Piest town ever. Libra rotated her wrist with a twirling sound and gave an opinion that was 180 degrees from the previous one. I had to admire that complete change of attitudes. Aries and Agacaros also nodded. There wasn't anything that I could say. While I was stunned, Dina moved next to me and rode in the air. She was using her finger to concentrate magical power and doing it quite skillfully. You have memories of your avatar. In response to Dina's question, I silently nodded. It was a silent communication. Perhaps, she did not want Libra to hear it. However, it was doubtful if Libra would have noticed since she was busy shooting lasers out of her eyes to destroy Merak's old home. Aries had reverted to his sheep form and was stomping around the town. Agacaros was randomly destroying whatever was nearby. Virgo was scared. It's not good to be led by your avatar too much. Your ego will disappear. If you think it is dangerous, consider leaving this town immediately. I nodded again at Dina's suggestion. I would pass at losing my ego. I should consider withdrawing as she suggested. Enough. Stop this. We did not come here to destroy the town. Clap. I stopped the three idiots by hitting them with my hand. If this continued, something important might be destroyed. I stopped the rampages of those three and walked down the ruined town. I was wondering where to go, yet my feet naturally moved on their own as if I was living here until yesterday. Guided by the memory of Rupas inside me, I moved my legs and eventually arrived in front of a mansion. It was a building that was evidently splendid in the past but was now dilapidated. Oh, this is a decent house. Is this Rupasama's home? That's right. You could call it my house. Though I can count the number of times I have stepped inside. I casually answered Agacaros and went inside. Technically, this mansion was certainly my house. According to the memories, Rupa's father lived here as did her mother. But even so, this was not really my, Rupa's, home. I, Rupas, was living in a shabby hut at the side. This is, as you can see, it's like a storehouse. Well, actually it is a storehouse. Cobwebs were everywhere. The tiny hut was almost like a dog's kennel. This former storehouse was where Rupas grew up. I naturally did not know of such a setting. Rupas was set to wear a dress mostly as a hobby and for better performance. In an exaggerated sense, if the strongest equipment was dangerous swimsuit, I would have equipped it on Rupas without hesitation. Now I thought that it was a good thing the strongest equipment was not a swimsuit. In terms of story, I never considered why Rupas would be wearing a dress. But Rupas of this world could be like that because of the poverty of her youth. She admired, envied, thirsted, and looked up to the upper CLA.S. After she gained power, she collected fancy dresses and S.H.I plus New York objects to realize the dreams of her youth. No, maybe I was overthinking this. My father disliked me for being born with black wings. If it was allowed, he might have killed me. However, the respectability of being upper CLA.S. and the desperate persuasion of my mother barely spared me from being killed. The result was me being isolated in the storehouse. I spoke fluently of the unknown past as if I had experienced personally. I heard that memories were never forgotten, but merely buried so deeply that it was difficult to draw out. In other words, even forgotten memories could come Gus.H.I plus NG forth with the right stimulus. This body belonged to Rupas, so the memories that I did not know about were still deep inside her brain. Perhaps coming to this town caused her memories to surge forth once more. Master, I request permission to kill your father. Impossible. He's already dead. When I considered the matter of her father, I naturally gained the information that he was already dead. It was gradually becoming easier to access Rupa's memories. Anyway, I should persuade Libra who was saying dangerous things and also stop Ares who was trying to set fire to the mansion. The mansion must not burn since it might contain important clues. This is the most likely location for Parthinos to be. I did not know if Parthinos knew about my home, but she should be able to find out after 200 years. Besides, there might be something about Rupa's past which I was not aware of. No, even just a stimulus would be enough. That alone could allow me to draw out Rupa's memories. I thought so without speaking aloud and stepped into the storehouse. I thought that it was a horrible place. I could hardly imagine anyone living here. There were only one small bed and all manners of unidentified junks. Since this was a storehouse, it was natural to store things here. There was nothing wrong with it. However, these junks were obviously thrown in here by her father out of frustration. Well, it didn't matter. The important thing was clues that led to what Rupas uncovered about the G.O.Dis scenario 200 years ago. However, there was nothing related here, which was somewhat disappointing. Well, if I thought about it, Rupas only spent her childhood here. When she actively sought to eradicate the demons was after she reached level 1000 as an adventurer. She probably did not realize anything so important when she was still a child. In other words, there was no clue here. This seemed to be a wasted trip. The G.O.Dis scenario, huh? I murmured softly. Everyone other than Dina looked at me strangely. They merely reacted to my words which did not seem familiar to them. On the other hand, Dina was unresponsive. I thought she might know something, but it seemed unfamiliar to her as well. Rupa-sama, what is the G.O.Dis scenario? Oh, it is something the Demon King mentioned the other day. He said that the world is moving according to the G.O.Dis scenario. Is any of you familiar with it? Everyone shook their heads or hands to indicate that they did not know. Even the 12 heavenly stars did not know. It seemed Rupas had been quite secretive 200 years ago. What were you doing, Rupas? At least tell it to Libra. Allow me to answer that question. A question that N.O. Body could answer. As I thought so, a young girl's voice was heard from the entrance of the storehouse. However, the voice was very unusual. It sounded as if it was transmitted directly into my mind. It was difficult to describe it. If I had to draw an A.N.A. logi, it would be that an invisible and cheap earphone was put on me and I was forced to listen to a cracking voice. At least, this was not the voice of a living human. A semi-transparent girl was standing at the entrance. The scenery behind her could be seen through her body, which was evidently not substantial. Her age was young. Her outward appearance was about 12 years old. Her braided green hair extended to her knees. Dressed in a robe, she attracted all of our attention. It has been a while, Rupa-sama. You appeared unchanged from 200 years ago. This old woman is relieved. Oh dear, the lifespan of a flugel is such an enviable thing. On the other hand, I just keep getting older and have now become a ghost. He he he. Contrary to her youthful appearance, her tone and composure were like those of an old woman. Her relaxed, long-winded speech was unbalanced when taking her appearance into consideration. Well, it has been a long 200 years. I knew that you would be back someday. And I have kept Vinayamur as you ordered back then. However, some time ago, I choked on a fruit and left my body. Looking at the laughing ghost, I could think of nothing and merely responded with a dumb eh. Wait a minute. Those words and a span of 200 years. And that line about keeping Vinayamur. If you put all these together, then... Oh. What is it, Rupa-sama? Have you forgotten the face of this old woman? Knowing about your resurrection, I hurriedly and painstakingly recreated my previous appearance. Wait? That tone, and 200 years, are you granny? Before I could ask, Virgo posed her question while pointing her finger at the girl. Virgo did not recognize her immediately, so it meant that she was an ordinary old woman when she was still alive. The girl laughed as if it was really funny and answered in the tone of an old woman, what is it, my grandchild? A little difference in appearance and you no longer know me. And no, this isn't a little difference at all. The girl puffed her chest up in front of Virgo and grinned. Then, she looked at us and opened the edge of her mouth, declaring her name in a dignified manner. The name was as we expected. She was the person we were looking for. I'm the one who stayed next to the black-winged overlord, a member of the 12 heavenly stars, part he knows of the maiden. To become Rupa-sama's strength once again, I have refused the call of the heavens. Authors notes it was merely instinct that Rupas collected golden objects. The other person was reading it too deeply. Footnotes. Déjà vu is a French term describing the feeling that one has lived through the present situation before. A wild last boss appeared. Translator, Hand of Vecna. Editor, 2 more free thoughts. Part he knows was once the name of the tribe which served the G.O.Dis. They were agents of the G.O.Dis in the world below and worked in the shadow to maintain the balance of the world. Perhaps, she was proud of the role that had persisted since the birth of the human species. They were different from other inferior beings. They were seen and acknowledged by the G.O.Dis. As divine servants, they dedicated love and loyalty to the G.O.Dis. They found the clergy, which devoted only faith without knowing what the G.O.Dis was, to be ridiculous. This fact enhanced their sense of superiority. They knew the secrets of the world. They knew the true purpose of the G.O.Dis. They knew the true meaning behind the love for humanity. Magical beasts and demons, as well as humans and animals, were all in accordance with the G.O.Dis will. These were all merely pieces moving on the board. They alone stood outside of the board. They were the original humans. That was also the name of their great ancestor. As the son of the G.O.Dis, he was said to be created by Elovinus as the first human. His direct descendants were the agents of the G.O.Dis. They were the only ones among humans who knew the true purpose of the G.O.Dis and were obliged to support it. Parthinos did not doubt it. Indeed, she was proud of it from the depths of her heart. She had unshakable love and faith in the G.O.Dis. Unshakable. So she believed. Her encounter with the black-winged overlord started with her intrusion. It was considered to be an impregnable location. Neither the demons nor the tyrants of the past could enter the sanctuary of the G.O.Dis. She was accompanied by Megrez, Alioth, Merak, and who would eventually become 4 of the 7 heroes and entered the unfamiliar territory of the sanctuary. Even the strongest gatekeeper, was conversely defeated and the selection scales was taken. The elite troops of the G.O.Dis advanced to repel the intruders but were instead defeated. Finally, Parthinos, the current head of the Aeneas family, was forced to confront the intruders. Leave, intruders. This is the G.O.Dis sanctuary. It is not a place for inferior beings. Well. Unfortunately, we are inferior beings, so we cannot understand the words of N.O.Bli beings. The ominous black wings fluttered as the overlord of the mortal world chuckled. Her mouth twisted slightly as if craving for battle. Her eyes were sharp like a blade and her golden hair with tints of vermilion near her neck was like a blazing flame. A flugel's wings should naturally be white, but they darkened when tainted by mana. If they became jet black, it would already be considered a magical beast. She was not a flugel, but a magical beast in the shape of a humanoid, or perhaps a new species, the 8th. It was like how humans evolved into elves, beastkins, and hobbits in the past. She had mutated into a creature different from flugels. Even more so, if they are the ones who force despair and suffering on the people, the obligations that accompany N.O.Ability. That is my creed. If my beloved people were forced into despair, the G.O.Dis must know of it. Then I will drag her off with my hand until I hold the seat of the G.O.Dis. This woman was dangerous. Parthinos understood the danger with a glance. The entire world was at the will of the G.O.Dis, moving according to her scenario. The demons reduced the number of humanoids and when they died, they became mana to empower the humanoids. This seesaw game was the providence of the world. It did not depart from the scenario of the G.O.Dis and the Demon King. No, in the first place, it was impossible to have anything beyond the will of the G.O.Dis and the Demon King, but Rupa's Maffel was different. The G.O.Dis did not expect the mutation of the flugels. Gaining unrivaled power, unifying the world, and driving the demons to the brink of extinction was completely outside the scenario. Fool! Be ashamed of the thoughts in your heart. Ha! I have been shamed a long time ago. You are late by 270 years, girl. Parthinos raised her staff, while Rupas rested her favorite whipsword on her shoulder. In response, tens, or even hundreds of elite troops of the G.O.Dis surrounded Rupas. These were the chosen warriors of the G.O.Dis, averaging over level 600. Of course, they could resist her coercion. The stronger ones even reached level 1000 like Rupas. Even if Rupas was strong for a level 1000 character, she would merely be prey caught in a net when she was besieged like this. But she chuckled fearlessly and the crimson glow of her eyes shone even brighter. Ridiculous. You think you can stop me with this? If you really want to stop me, at least bring out an... Ugh, impossible. 1 hour later, the difference between the winner and the loser was clear. The elite troops, which guarded the seat of the G.O.Dis, had collapsed in disarray. Parthinos herself was also down, leaving only the black-winged fallen angel standing in the middle. Her dress was free from any speck of dirt. Her face and skin were as beautiful as before the fighting began. Different, this one was different. This could not be explained as level 1000. No matter how she consumed magical beasts and raised her abilities, it should not result in such a monster. In fact, the people she brought along as well as her tamed magical beasts were not much of a threat. Oh, you are, this is nothing to be surprised about. Since I decided to challenge the G.O.Dis, it would be a joke if I am not capable of doing this much. The intruder stood before Parthinos and declared as a matter of fact. Parthinos could no longer stand up on her own, while Rupaz was completely unhurt. There was no way to turn the situation around, so she waited for the final blow to put an end to things. Well, do it. My life is dedicated to the G.O.Dis, even now, I'm not afraid of death. This soul will not lose its ego after dying and will continue to be the G.O.Dis follower. Even if you kill me here, it is meaningless. Oh. A life dedicated to the G.O.Dis. As if it was something funny, Rupaz smiled deeply and grabbed Parthinos by her neck, lifting her up to her eye level. In that case, would it not be fun to take away the life you dedicated? What? It's easy to kill you. But before that, I'll give you a choice. You are too ignorant here. Rupaz said and carried Parthinos off like luggage. She approached her friends, the heroes-to-be, who were searching nearby. We are going back. The objective has been accomplished. I told you to stop calling me that. Going back, we are not going to meet the G.O.Dis. Oh, Dubhi. That's no longer necessary. If there is information, this one has it. The armored swordsman Alioth, the heavily armored dwarf Mizar, and the white bear beastkin Dubhi stomped behind Rupaz. At a closer look, Dubhi was dragging the unconscious Migrez along. Even they did not reach this place unharmed. He was probably taken out by the gatekeeper's brachium skill. Wait, please wait. Where are you taking me? As I said, you are too ignorant. Firstly, I will show you the current world. Then Parthinos left the sanctuary for the first time and saw the world below. There were trials of the G.O.Dis, but the world below should still be enveloped in divine love. She then realized it was a mistake after seeing the world with her own eyes. The demons attacked the humanoids. Children lamented the loss of their parents, while mothers mourned the loss of their children. There was no paradise here, only despair and fear. What was once an absolute faith in the G.O.Dis was now beginning to crack. Virgo I was a bit confused. The girl before me should be Parthinos, according to her own words and Virgo's reaction. Her clothes and hair color were the same as in the game. Ares and the others did not object in any way. The problem was with what she said. Keeping Vinayamur as I ordered back then, what did that mean? I thought the seal of Vinayamur was her own decision. She should be like Ares and Agacaros, who went on a rampage out of loyalty. But from her words, it seemed that I, Rupaz, instructed this. But for what? What was the purpose? Why did I want to keep the town with all its hateful memories as it was? Parthinos. Yes. First of all, I apologize for having kept you waiting. I'm sorry. It must have been difficult. I'm unworthy of your words. Firstly, I should acknowledge her effort. This should ease the way into the main topic. So, can you tell me about it now? What you know of the G.O.Dis scenario? Of course, Rupasama. But before that, to what extent have you lost your memories? I was inadvertently surprised by the words coming out of Parthinos' mouth. No, it wasn't just me. Ares and Agacaros also had shocked expressions on their faces. It wasn't because they found out that I was not Rupaz, probably. But it was because I lost my memories. That confused me. So you know about that? Of course. During your resurrection, some memories would be lost due to the G.O.Dis subtle manipulation. It was you yourself who said so. To my question, Parthinos gave an unexpected reply. Did Rupaz predict that she would lose her memories? If so, was the current situation according to her plans? Dina had a concerned look that was rarely seen. A line of sweat dripped down her face. She knew about my inner self, but seemed to be uncertain about Rupaz's actions from 200 years ago. Oh, then, Rupasama, you have lost your memories. What? This, so it was really like that. In contrast to the shocked Ares and Agacaros, Libra was calm. Everyone looked to Libra, waiting for her to continue. Rupa-sama often behaves as if she does not remember her past. Moreover, she did not respond immediately to Partheno's appearance. After coming to this town, she seemed to be regaining her memories instead of feeling nostalgic about the past. Therefore, I presumed that she is missing memories just like me. Oh, this defective golem was really sharp today. Was this really Libra? Anyway, I could only confess about the loss of memories at this point. Well, I suppose there's no need to hide it any further. Parthenos, why did I order you to seal this town 200 years ago? It would be faster to just see for yourself than for me to explain. Perhaps shock would cause the memories to resurface. Faster to just see for myself? Was it something that could be understood by just seeing it? Moreover, according to what she said, it seemed to be a considerably shocking thing. Parthenos stood, or rather floated, before us and went forward. We promptly followed behind her. Leaving my parents' house, storehouse, we went through the streets that became even more of a ruins because of Ares and the others. Eventually, we arrived at the exit of the town. Parthenos stopped and turned towards us. Next, Rupa-sama should continue alone. The others wait here, and do not rampage anymore. Otherwise, it might awaken. Everyone nodded at Parthenos' incomprehensible warning. I didn't quite understand the part about awaken, but I felt the same about rampaging. Leaving Dina and the others behind, Parthenos gently rose into the sky. A moment later, I too soared into the sky. Apparently, the destination was the summit. For us who could fly, an altitude of 3,807 meters was not a significant distance. No, even if it was equivalent to walking 4 kilometers, it would be a considerable distance. However, our speeds were too fast. Parthenos and I arrived at the summit in merely tens of seconds and landed in an appropriate location. The summit of Vanayamer had a huge hole like the caldera of a volcano. It was as if something had penetrated the mountain right in the center. But there was no magma. It was just an open hole. Here is the answer. Please take a look. What? Something is jammed inside, but my words stopped as I peeked. I was speechless. No, this was amazing. It might have been better if it was just full of magma. The shock came from seeing something even bigger than Ares for the first time in this world. No, there was no comparison. It's huge. Something that looked like a living creature was there. No, could it really be a living creature? If this was true, it would be too ridiculous. This was a fantasy, so I understood that common sense would not apply to this world. Or at least, I thought I understood. Still, I did not expect such absurd creatures to actually exist. It was the head of a reptilian creature. Its eyes were closed. Its nostrils inflated occasionally in tune with its breathing, sending gusts of warm wind to the top. The head alone probably exceeded the size of Ares in his gigantic form. Was the body folded to be able to fit into the mountain, or perhaps it was digging all the way into the ground? Its full length was tens, no, hundreds, even thousands of kilometers. Or perhaps beyond estimation. In any case, if something like this became active, Vanayamer would be utterly destroyed. No, in the worst-case scenario, perhaps even the entire world. One of the elite forces of the G.O.Dis, an arbitrator of the world. One of the 5 Ouroboroses, the one who controls the light heavenly Ouroboros. I shuddered as Parthenos told me its name. Image of an Ouroboros from author's notes, extra information about the 7 heroes. Dubhi, a beastkin similar to a polar bear, He has a gentle personality. He adds bear to the end of his sentences, but in fact, it is consciously attached as a character trait and he rarely forgets to do this. If you ask him, he will let you cuddle him. Nose pasta, am I going to be called nose pasta until the end of this story? Migrez, isn't it at least better than me who was dragged around during a battle in a flashback scene? Dubhi, it's still better than me who was merely explained as a white bear in my first appearance, Bear Mizar, well, cheer up, nose pasta. Nose pasta, ub.a.s.t.a.r.d. Translators notes the next 10 chapters, 51 to 60, will be translated and hosted by, while I work on chapters 61 to 70. Expect Chapter 51 to be online on February 15th. Footnotes: Aeneas was a Trojan hero in Greek mythology. He was featured in Homer's Iliad and Virgil's Aeneid. He was the son of Aphrodite, Venus, and was the ancestor of Romulus, who founded the city of Rome. The scales of the G.O.Dis is the boss that dropped the item selection scales, used to create Libra as mentioned in. Again, the author confused the two names and used here seemingly to refer to both the boss and the item. The 7 humanoid races are the ones represented by the 7 heroes, namely human, dwarf, elf, hobbit, flugel, beastkin, and vampire. N.O. Bless oblige is a French expression that translates as N.O. Bility obliges and denotes the concept that N.O. Bility extends beyond mere N.I. Tilments and requires the person who holds such a status to fulfill social responsibilities. Furthermore, Rupa seems to be alluding to Theodicy and the problem of evil here, questioning why the G.O.Dis allows the humanoids to suffer, e.g. invasion of demons. Ouroboros is an ancient symbol depicting a serpent or dragon eating its own tail. First mentioned in the author's notes of, an Ouroboros is a long-bodied oriental dragon directly created by the G.O.Dis. Unlike the previous author's notes where names were given only in kanji, the different kinds of dragons were given English transliterations, in the case of, in Chapter 51. For consistency, the author's notes of will be edited to reflect these changes. Nose pasta, nickname for Alioth as described in Dubhe, also called Alpha Ursae Majoris, is the second brightest star in the constellation of Ursa Major and is the northern pointer of the Big Dipper that points towards Polaris, the North Star. In this novel, Dubhe is the Beast King, the bear beastkin member of the 7 heroes. According to, the largest carnivore on land is the polar bear, Ursus maritimus. Adult males typically weigh 400 to 600 kilograms, 880 to 1,320 pounds, and have a nose-to-tail length of 2.4 to 2.6 m, 7 feet 10 in 8 feet 6 in. A wild last boss appeared.